Executive Suite with WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi.
Welcome to Executive Suite this New Year's weekend. I'm Ted Nesi, and I'm joined this week by Angus Davis. Angus is someone I've known for a while, since I got here at Rhode Island as a reporter. He's a veteran tech entrepreneur. He's currently the founder and CEO of Swipely, a Providence-based startup, and you were one of the top 10 entrepreneurs under 30 for Business Week in 2006, I think. I don't think you're eligible for under 30 prizes anymore.
I am no longer eligible, sad to say. I'll be 35 in March.
All right, so you're getting old, Angus.
That's what my wife likes to tell me.
Pretty soon you'll retire and I won't be able to have you on anymore. So I want to start in, I mentioned Swipely. That's your company now. It started up early in 2010, I believe. You got off the ground. You went public. And I like to quote you gave in a recent interview to get this started. You said, "We're bringing analytics to Main Street." So let's start with that. What is Swipely? What are you doing? Who are your customers? What's the deal?
Sure. Swipely is a simple way for local merchants to accept payments using credit and debit cards, and to use that to better understand their customers, and then take that understanding to help them grow their sales. So for example, if you go to a neighborhood restaurant or the wine and cheese shop, and you purchase something with your credit or debit card, those merchants today are paying various service providers to accept payments. What Swipely does is we replace the old-fashioned service providers with our service, and we not only help those merchants to accept payments using the same systems, the same credit cards we all have today, but we leverage the information behind each transaction to help those businesses understand their customers better and grow their sales.
So I would still go to a Swipely business with my MasterCard or my Visa, swipe that, no change on my side, the customer end.
Correct.
It's who's processing that information and then what you're doing with it after it goes into the machine.
Correct. Each year in the U.S., businesses are spending upwards of $70 billion, if you can believe it, on the cost of accepting credit and debit cards. And over the last 20 years, there's been very little innovation in that space. The way that those merchants accept credit cards today is really not very different than when I was far younger than 30. And so what we're trying to do is to bring innovation into that market and help those local businesses tap into what we call the big data behind every transaction. And it turns out that this information about how frequently your customers are coming in, what percentage of your sales comes from repeat customers versus new customers, even down to the level of being able to help a particular customer and identify that they are one of your best customers so you can recognize them next time they come into the store. And these are things that a lot of the big companies do, or online companies like Amazon.com, but we work primarily with local small businesses, independently owned and operated, like the restaurant down the street.
So just so people are clear, they might have seen Square, the little stick it in your iPhone credit card thing. You see that a lot of really small businesses. You're sort of in that middle ground, mom and pop businesses, but ones that are doing a significant amount of business annually, but not necessarily trying to get Walmart to be Swipely.
That's right. So we're not going after the Walmarts or the Best Buys of the world, but we're also not going after the, say, food truck or the person at the art fair. The company you mentioned, Square, they work with folks that do about $5,000 per year in credit card sales. So it's really individuals at, a farmer's market or something like that. And it's a great product. Swipely works with merchants who already accept credit cards. So for example, a popular restaurant in downtown Providence or in Wayland Square or Newport. And we work with but not only restaurants, but also salons, liquor store, grocery store, a variety of those types of merchants. Let me stick right with
that example there. Let's say I opened a small restaurant, we'll call it Blue Stripe, and what would it take for my restaurant to join Swipely, and then what would I get out of being a Swipely customer as a restaurateur?
Sure. Well, most restaurants use something called a point-of-sale system, and you've probably seen it when you've been in the restaurant. They have touch screens or whatnot. And the nice thing about Swipely is you don't require any changes to those systems in the store. So in order to get up and running, literally it just takes a few days. And it turns out that if those systems all talk to different service providers to handle all their payments. And Swipely replaces those old-fashioned, what they call payment processing companies, with our new technology, which not only processes the payments, but also unlocks all this valuable data to help you better understand your customers and bring them back to spend more.
So even the waiters and waitresses would still type in orders and run through credit cards the same way they had before if you became a Swipely
That's
company.
the beauty of Swipely. There's zero cost to get up and running. Not only is there no cost in terms of new hardware or software, because there is no new hardware or software in the store, you don't need to train the staff to do anything differently. And we're replacing an existing line item that's already on that merchant's cost of doing business. We basically help them transform what is frankly, a necessary evil, the cost of accepting credit cards, that cost, into actually a marketing investment. So now for the same price, they're actually able to get much more value from the payment network.
And it's fascinating. I was thinking about Books on the Square. I visited there doing Christmas shopping this year, and I was thinking there's a lot of people here, coming in and out. They might be frequent customers, but they're a small operation, unlike what Barnes & Noble now, since Borders is gone.
Right.
And I was looking at your mock-ups online at swipely.com, I think is the website.
Yes.
And you can see you'd have each customer, you'd have their name, here's how often they come in, how much they spent, what they buy, all that kind of information. Right now, most medium-sized companies, restaurants, don't have that information at hand, right?
Right. I mean, imagine if Amazon.com every night deleted their entire customer database. I mean, that's literally what happens on Main Street every day. And so what we're trying to do is to help these merchants to remember who the customers are that are coming in so they can recognize them. Some of our merchants are even offering reward programs using this technology, whereas in the old days they would have to give those punch cards or another card that you just lose in your purse or wallet. Now they can actually give people rewards just on the credit or debit card they're already using to purchase things. So it's all about bringing the type of technologies the big guys like Amazon.com and others have used for a number of years down to the regular local merchants that, frankly, I love to go to, but these types of technologies have been out of reach to them.
So we're giving them a way to compete with on the back
guys,
with what the big guys have. And have you seen success so far with people signing up?
Absolutely. Like any startup, we had a few twists and turns. I'm sure you'll ask me about that later. But just over the last 6 months since we've introduced our product into the market, we've actually grown the volume of merchants that are processing on our network to over $250 million now being processed each year using Swipely. And I think that's just the beginning. We're just scratching the surface. Believe it or not, there's actually $3.5 trillion each year being sent to, paid with credit cards. So there's a huge market opportunity that
even
we see
a small slice of it would be a massive business.
Absolutely.
And are they finding it interesting to have this information available?
They are, and we're seeing some very prominent merchants joining our network, not just here in Rhode Island, but we're servicing merchants all over the country. So, for example, just recently, a restaurant that signed up for Swipely in Washington, D.C., it's called Martin's Tavern, Billy Martin's Tavern. It's actually where President JFK proposed to Jackie. And they've been in business for 78 years, and they told us they've never before seen something like this that could help them better understand their customers. So even the most sophisticated merchants are seeing value in what we're offering.
Taking a veil off. It's fascinating. So we have to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about Swipely and the process they've gotten through to get where they are today. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi. My guest this week, old friend Angus Davis. He's a veteran tech entrepreneur. Now he's the founder and CEO of Swipely, a Providence-based startup. And Angus, we were talking before, you didn't start with the business model we just spent the first segment discussing. You've actually gone through, I guess, 3 now, although the second one seems related to the third one. Can you sort of explain what your first ideas for Swipely were and how you as an entrepreneur came to decide, okay, let's change course, and how you manage that?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I've had some experience building startup companies before, and one thing I've found is that what you start out trying to do and what you end up finding success doing aren't always the same thing. Everybody's used YouTube to watch videos and share videos, but few would know that actually YouTube started as a dating website. So,
I didn't know that.
Whatever the initial business idea was, the challenge, why do startups fail is actually an interesting question. Why wouldn't a startup work? It's not because they had the wrong idea when they started. It's because they didn't react quickly enough to what the market actually needed. So when we first started Swipely, we were actually helping consumers to write reviews of their credit card purchases that they'd made. And what we found was there wasn't a very compelling value proposition to do that. But we started hearing from merchants who said, wow, I would love a loyalty program to recognize my customers who are coming in when they shop with credit cards, which the merchants we work with, 70% of their business is with credit cards. So we started offering that, and then we recognized, wait a second, there's a massive industry here, $70 billion a year in the US, to provide essentially very old-fashioned payment processing services to these businesses. What if we could disrupt that? How much more value could we bring to these merchants? So we actually made the decision to do that about a year ago, and then we brought it to market about 6 months ago, and it's been sort of up and to the right ever since, which has been good. And so, I tell other entrepreneurs, you'll make some twists and turns as you figure out what the right fit is for your product with the market.
You make it sound almost easy, but I have to think that when you had one idea, you build a lot around it, and then you think, no, now that I see what the market wants, I'm going to shift in this direction. That must take, must be a major decision to say, all right, we're going to try this instead, to go to your investors and say, we're going in this direction.
Yeah, I had some experience with that actually in my last business too. I started a company in Silicon Valley called Tell Me, and we initially brought to market a consumer-oriented product. We ended up actually developing a product that we sold to big companies. And it was a similar process. And I think the hardest part as any human being is admitting you were wrong. My mother used to tell me when I was growing up that I was often wrong but seldom in doubt. And I had to...
Sound like the politicians I cover.
Yeah. So, I think as an entrepreneur, admitting when or acknowledging when you're doing something isn't working, being honest with yourself, and then collaborating with your team, and then putting in place what will work. And that's what we were able to do. And frankly, it's also in part because we have a stellar team of people working at Swipely, people who've had success in the past, who've been part of other startup companies, and who are now united at Swipely to go after the next big thing. So I think being very reactive to the market is key, and having the right people on your team.
And how many folks do you have working for you at this point?
We have about 35 people on the team, and most of them are based at our office in Providence.
And looking ahead, you've been getting some great press lately. This month, you were in GigOm, you were in a bunch of the other tech publications. Economy did a great story and said Rhode Island has a lot of interesting companies for such a small state, which was nice to read. What's coming in 2013? What's next? Where do you see things going in the new year for Swipely?
Sure. Well, we're going to be growing significantly in 2013. Now that we've sort of hit our stride and we've got a great group of hundreds of our first customers under our belt, the challenge for 2013 is to grow that to thousands of great customers. And so that's going to require hiring a lot of people to basically bring that message to the local merchants that we serve. So we'll be hiring a significant number of folks on our inside sales team, as well as our support team, and bringing on board some full-time recruiting help. So it'll be a big year of growth, I think, for us in 2013 at Swipely. And I'm excited to be doing that in Rhode Island. It feels a lot like my experience at my Silicon Valley startup in California some years ago. So it's an exciting time for the business. And look, there's no shortage of challenges in any startup company, but we're very excited about the growth for this year.
I'm going to ask you some more about your own history. You have a great story about how you got to where you are. But before we get to that, I always wonder about this. I know you've never disclosed it publicly, but certainly you probably could be comfortable from how successful Tell Me was, and you sold it to Microsoft. What makes you keep being a working stiff day to day running a new company when you could, I don't know, you could sail on your boat or something?
Sure, I do sail on my boat every once in a while, but nothing. I didn't retire at anywhere or anything like that. And Rhode Island is a wonderful place to live, and there's so many wonderful things to do, whether it's going to the beach or whatever. But so there's time for that in Rhode Island, but there's also time to be building another startup company. And for me, the opportunity to be able to grow a business in Rhode Island is something that I'm passionate about. I came back here I'm a native of Rhode Island, and I spent over a decade in California, in Silicon Valley, where so many technology companies are born and grow. And I really wanted to see that type of economic growth in my home state, and I was frustrated when I came home not seeing it. So some of the things we can do to make Rhode Island a better place to work, not just a great place to live. Obviously things like our education system, which I've spent a lot of time trying to help improve and grow, but also starting a business. And it's hard to start a business, and I have a lot of advantages. Because I've had a successful business in the past, our investors, who are all based in the Silicon Valley, have leaped at the opportunity to back this business.
They must know you have a track record.
Right, they must not have read that whole thing about past performance doesn't guarantee future results. But no, and for many of these investors, it was the first time they'd ever invested in a Rhode Island-based company. So for me, the idea of trying to grow a business in Rhode Island, it's very exciting to me personally. And I would just like so much to have a company like the one I grew in California, grow here in Rhode Island. And hopefully, after a few years, people would leave that company and start their own company. That's something that we saw at Tell Me, my last company. A lot of great people. Sure, you don't want everybody to quit, but it's exciting when somebody who's had success at company A can leave and start their own business, and that business can flourish and grow. So I would love to see that type of ecosystem develop here in Rhode Island, and I think we're just one of a handful of companies that are, there are other companies that are also trying to do the same thing. Like, for example, Andera, a company that's also based in Providence.
Charlie Kroll's company. Yeah.
That's right. They've grown now, I think they're approximately 100 employees, and they're doing great things. And I'm sure it's only a matter of time before one of Charlie's top folks, leaves and starts the next Andera, and that will be a great thing for Rhode Island.
There's an optimism you hear when you talk tech people. I don't always hear with people in other sectors of the Rhode Island economy, and we're going to talk a lot more. We're heading up against a break about some of the things you think lead to that and what could help the state some more. I want to ask one more thing on Swipely, which is just, do you think the company is going to be an acquisition target? You could easily see this fitting into one of the big companies that you're disrupting.
Sure. We do hear, every week we actually get emails from various either investors or what they call corporate development folks at these big companies. But really we're focused on trying to grow a large independent business. Now, you'll always look at those types of things, but for right now, the bigger opportunity we have is to grow the company in 2013 as an independent company. That's a much bigger opportunity that we see than selling to a larger company right now.
All right, well, when we come back, we're going to talk more about Rhode Island's economic situation. Angus never shy to share his opinion on that. And stick with us. You're watching Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi. My guest, Swipely CEO and Rhode Island native, Angus Davis. And Angus, we were talking before the break about some of the things Rhode Island could do to improve the economy, the constant discussion right now. You went out, you worked on Netscape, as a teenager, actually, the famous web browsing company. Then you founded Tell Me, voice recognition software, worked on that for quite a few years, acquired by Microsoft. And then you came back to Rhode Island. Why did you come back, and how do you square that with the constant discussion of Rhode Island's a terrible place for business, people don't want to be here, et cetera?
Sure. I mean, I came back to Rhode Island because I grew up here. I love it here. I have friends. My family's here. I dreamed of someday starting my own family here, and I've been very fortunate to be able to do that. I have a beautiful wife and a beautiful son now, and that's all in the last few years, and that's just been the best part about coming back to Rhode Island. But in terms of Rhode Island as a place to work, there's no doubt that Rhode Island can be a significantly better place to work, to start a business, to grow a business, and to join a business. And there's no question about that.
You mentioned to me in an email when we were talking about the show, Rhode Island needs, you said, to recognize that business comes to Rhode Island for many reasons before evaluating tax rates. And I know you've said to me before that sometimes we have so much discussion of tax rates around, we miss all the other things that could be on a business's radar screen. What are you thinking about when you say that?
Well, sure. I mean, look, we can cut taxes, down to zero, and then what? What we need to do is find something that's going to attract businesses to want to come here and grow here. And what I sometimes use an example with taxes is to say, consider Fenway Park. You go to watch the Boston Red Sox. It's a great team. Maybe not this year, but it's a great team. It's a great experience. You're in Fenway, and when you go to get a soda or hot dog, it's expensive. I mean, I think it was $6 for a hot dog. Yeah. But as much as it is expensive, you're at Fenway. You're watching the Red Sox. It's a quality product, even though there is a high price. It's a little bit like that with taxes. If you're in a place like Northern California, Silicon Valley, it's one of the most expensive places actually from a tax standpoint.
Very high in California.
It's ridiculous, and yet because it's Silicon Valley, people are still flowing in there, and companies are starting there all the time. Whether it be Twitter or LinkedIn, companies that literally didn't exist a few years ago that today employ thousands of people. So simply cutting taxes isn't going to be the key. You've got to actually improve the product, i.e., you got to put the Red Sox on the field. You got to create Fenway Park. You have to have an economy where businesses are growing, and then you have the right, if you want, you're going to charge a higher price, fine. But you can't just cut taxes to get businesses to grow. You also need to look at things that will get the business to come here. Capital formation, high quality education system, taking all the folks that graduate from places like URI and Brown and keeping them here. These are all things that have nothing to do with taxes, but they have a lot to do with growing a business.
And on the other side, if your taxes are higher, you need to make sure the product, you'd argue, I think, is a good one that people feel like they're getting their money's worth.
Oh, yeah. No, nothing worse than a high price and a lousy product.
Right, like last year at Fenway Park.
Yes.
You keep close tabs on the startup scene in Rhode Island here. You just mentioned Charlie Kroll. I know you've been involved with Beta Spring, which is building up companies. What do you see going on there? Do you see room for optimism about there are a lot of people seem to be starting companies. Not all of them will succeed, but it seems like at least some of them could hit it big.
That's right. I mean, I think, look, there's a difference between a startup and just a new company. Not all new companies are startups. And what distinguishes a startup is a company that's designed for significant growth. And what that means is they're attacking a very large market that they have a way of addressing. So, for example, a barbershop. Everybody needs their hair cut, but it'd be very difficult to grow your barbershop to serve all of the people that need their hair cut, right? So a startup company is a company that solves a problem that a lot of people have. i.e. a big market, and it can scale to serve them. And so I think what's exciting is to see some of those types of high growth, true startup companies, companies that could attract venture capital funding and so forth, growing in Rhode Island. So Swipely is certainly one of them. We've attracted over, close to $10 million in outside investment from private venture capitalists in places like the Silicon Valley. Charlie Kroll's company, Andera, is another great example. They're a little further along than us. They have about, I think, in the neighborhood of 100 employees. They've also attracted outside venture capital investment. And so I think there's a lot of reasons for excitement. BetaSpring, I've been supportive of BetaSpring. That's really at the very earliest seed stage. And I think it's a great program for the state.
You, on Twitter, Jason Becker, a regular viewer reader over here, mentioned he was wondering what your thoughts were on how to build a robust, tech sector with big positive spillover effects rather than sort of a loosely connected small community. How do you is there a tipping point, and can you force that, or is that just a natural thing?
Well, sure. I mean, I think that is a risk. It's not just having a bunch of tinkerers and technologists that get together every once in a while. It's actually having companies that are big, sustainable, that can spin off other businesses over time. So, I definitely think that the opportunity here is to create multiple large, sustainable businesses, sort of the next generation. Our economy in Rhode Island never really made effectively the switch from the old manufacturing-based economy to today's knowledge-based economy. What we're going to need to do is we're going to need large employers in the state that operate in that new economy.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you, switching, we only have about 2 minutes left, but you were on the Board of Regents for elementary and secondary education. You're a well-known advocate for big reforms in the K-12 sector, changes, charters, and others. Commissioner Gist, I know you're a fan of hers. What do you think of what's gone on with the very rapid merging of the Higher Ed Board and the K-12 Board? Are you concerned about that? Do you think it was the right move? What are your thoughts?
I don't fully understand it, to be perfectly honest with you. I did serve on the State Board of Regents, and I chaired the committee that searched for and hired Deborah Gist as our commissioner. I think the world of her, and I'm so happy that she's back at work after her illness. And I have been an advocate for things like getting Teach for America to come here, and for charter schools. I sit on the board of the Rhode Island Mayoral Academies, which operates one of the highest performing charter schools in the state. So I think it's very important that we continue the education reform agenda and the strategic plan that Commissioner Gist laid out. And so long as the new board is continuing to support her strategic plan, then I wish it all the best. I don't fully understand, though, why they merged the board. I didn't quite follow that.
One more question on education. We have only 30 seconds left. You didn't end up going to college. Is that something you recommend to others, as there's all this debate about the value of college?
Do as I say, not as I do. I think there's no question. There's 2 unemployment rates in this country. For those that don't have any college education, it's over 15%. Some would argue maybe even like 20%. And for those that have a college degree, it's well under 5%. So look, the best path to a stable future is to get a good education.
Do as I say, not as I do. The closing advice for the year we get on Executive Suite from Angus Davis. Angus, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. I want to thank all of you who've watched on our first year here on Executive Suite. I hope you and your family have a happy new year. If you've missed any episodes of the show, you can catch those on WPRI.com. From all of us here at Eyewitness News, we wish you a happy rest of your holiday season and a great 2013. See you on the other side.